How's that burger?
So good.
Is it super good? Yeah? Is this your place? Look at that burger. Oh my goodness. That's something else there, man. Oh, that was a big in there. Good? Mm-hmm. Here we are at Bi-Mart. And we are going to go look at fishing stuff. What, nothing better than fishing stuff, right? Today I'm mainly targeting my plastics and rubber jigs and stuff like that, and the hardware to do that kind of stuff. So let's go in and see what they got. Decisions. Nice, that's a largemouth. Yeah! Hell yeah! Alright, so we are going to start the episode talking about my go-to jigs for summertime. I literally just caught this little largemouth bass on the salamander jig. This is only my second largemouth I've ever caught in my life, so I'm pretty stoked about it, even though it's really small. But let's go ahead and put him back and see if we can catch another one. So the first jig I want to talk about is the Ned rig. This particular Ned rig happens to be the Z-Man Copper Truce Finesse TRD worm. It is the 2.75 version. The reason why I go with Z-Man is because it's made with Elazitech. If anybody knows anything about Elazitech, it's very, very buoyant. What it does is when you jig it, holds the jig straight up and down as the jig head stays on the bottom of the river or lake or pond or whatever you're fishing. This particular Finesse TRD worm happens to be the Copper Truce, which is green and brown with red sparkles. It actually works fairly well. I use this one, and I also use the Deal Finesse TRD worm. Same exact size, just one is blue and brownish black, I guess, and this one's green. How I set this up is a little crazy for some people. I literally take my jig and I attach it to a swivel, and then I attach the swivel to my main line, and this is basically how I fish this jig on the setup. The Ned rig is meant to be fished very slow. A lot of people fish it way too fast, and their chances of catching fish go down when they fish it faster. This is a finesse, very slow, methodical jig. I'm going to go ahead and bounce into a little bit of video and show you a couple different ways on how I personally use the Ned rig and feel like it has caught several fish and is a very successful way to use the Ned rig. So anytime I go anywhere and I'm using the Ned rig, I like to start out doing a slow pull across the bottom of the river or lake or pond or whatever I'm fishing. Just a very slow pull, keeping that jig straight up and down on the bottom. Once again, it's a slow pull across the bottom of the lake, river, or pond that you're fishing. See how the Elazitech keeps the jig straight up and down in the water? That's why I highly believe Z-Man jigs are a plus. So let's go ahead and roll into some footage and see how I caught some bass pulling the Ned rig across the bottom of the Columbia River.
There he is. A little guy, but hey, it's on the Ned jig. Look at that, right up through the top of the mouth. Just a little guy, but hey.
Alright, so I caught this little tiny guy on the Ned jig. The Ned jig is also known, well, more prone to be known to catch smaller fish, which is okay because on a day of tough fishing, a small fish is better than no fish, you know what I mean? So this is how I got my Ned jig set up. Hold on, let me set it back up. That fish kind of just wankered it. Alright, so yeah, basically I just set it up like this. And then I just slowly drag it across the bottom. Alright, so this next method of using the Ned rig is what I call the pop drop method, where I take the tip of my pole and I just pop it, and then I just let the lure drop right back down, just like that. Pop, lift it straight up, and then come back down. Pop, straight up, come down. Pop, straight up, come down. And I just keep repeating this literally until I retrieve it or catch a fish. Fish on! Fish on! Oh, Ned rig! Ned rig. There. Little fish. But hey, you know what? Okay, so the next Ned rig technique is as simple as they get. It's basically just cast out and retrieve, and keep doing that until a fish bites. As you can see, it's just cast out and slowly or fastly retrieve.
Fish on. Nice. A little guy. A little guy on the green Z-Man Ned rig. He's doing the trick here.
Another little guy, but I caught him on the green Z-Man Ned rig. So in my opinion, there's two major downfalls using the Z-Man Ned rig. One, obviously, the hook is exposed, so you're going to be prone to way more snags. And the second is, after it sits in your box on a hot day, you come back to it and it's just a melted goo ball. It's just nasty, and then all your other jigs are just covered in this stuff. Those are the only two things that I personally don't care for about the Ned rig. You can Texas rig this to help prevent the snagging and whatnot, but the melting in your box, man, that is a major downfall. I have noticed if you keep them in the plastic bag that they come in, and like keep them in a closed tackle box, they tend to not melt down as bad. And I guess it also depends on the tackle box you have, but yeah, they melt pretty bad in your tackle box, and then it's just a waste of money and a waste of other lures and a mess. And yeah, so those are the only two downfalls that I see in the Z-Man Ned rig Finesse TRD. Alright, so the next jig I would like to talk about is the 4-inch Watermelon Candy Baby Brush Hog by Zoom Baits. So there's a couple differences between this and the Ned rig. This one obviously is Texas rigged. Obviously I got a 1/0 hook, and it goes through, so it gives it kind of a weedless effect. I mean, you still get snagged up a little bit with it, but not near as much as you would with an exposed hook. The other difference is these do not have a Lazatech, so they're not buoyant at all, really. I mean, they float, but they're not buoyant like a Lazatech buoyant. It's gonna have the same retrieve style as you would with the Ned rig. This one you can retrieve it a little bit faster. You don't have to quite go as slow as you would with a Ned rig, but it's literally just the drag across the bottom of the river, pop drop method, or just reel that bad boy in. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and run through how I typically rig this particular brush hog on the Texas rig. So first, what I do is I normally use a 3/16 ounce weight, bullet head weight, and I'll just run that, boom, on my line. Okay, and the second thing I do is I take an orange bead, a little tiny orange bead, and I'll go ahead and put that down my line as well. And I'll go ahead and take my swivel, and I will attach my swivel to the main line. And then you'll have something similar to this. So you'll have your swivel, you'll have your bead, and then your weight. And I typically tend to use a swivel just for easier access for when I'm switching out my plastics. And it also keeps your line from twisting and just being a nuisance while fishing. After everything is all set up, this is typically how your setup should look. You should have your 3/16 ounce weight, your bead, swivel, and then whatever jig you'd like to use. In this case, we're talking about our baby brush hog. Another little dink. Another little guy. Another one, cut him on the mini brush hog. Alright, so the next jig that I want to talk about is the 3.25 Black and Blue Shadow Woolly Bug by Yum Baits. I use this jig exactly like I do the mini brush hog. I Texas rig it with my 3/16 ounce weight, my bead, my swivel, and I literally just slowly drag it across the bottom, do the pop drop method and the reel in method. This jig and the very next jig that I'm going to talk about are rigged exactly the same way, and I use them exactly the same way. So I'm going to go ahead and skip through how to rig them and whatnot and how to use them. I will show you underwater video of what they look like underwater, but I'm not going to go in depth on exactly how to use them. You can just rewind this video and you can get that from the very first jig that we talk about. The definition of jealousy is the feeling or showing envy of someone . Right on, there's another one. Another little guy. Can't seem to get into the big ones, man. It's been a rough couple days of fishing. Nothing but little guys, but hey, a fish is a fish. No complaints here.
Jumping on the bubonic about the album, the chronic, we pumping out of the product. Got the umbilical, never getting satirical, nothing short of a miracle. Try to beat me so cynical, dropping shit that's subliminal. People call me tyrannical, not to get too hysterical. I'm a lyrical miracle.
Alright, so this jig right here is my number one jig that I prefer to use off the bank. It's either a 4-inch or a 6-inch. I don't really care what size, they both work just as well as the other. This happens to be the 6-inch pumpkin chartreuse lizard. There's a lot of lizards on the rocks here on the Columbia River, so I believe imitating a lizard, stuck in the water or floating through the water is just a smart way to catch bass. It's what is naturally out there, so I figure whatever's naturally out there, they're gonna naturally hit, when you're trying to imitate it. So I'm gonna go ahead and roll into some footage and show you what this looks like underwater, and then I'm gonna go ahead and roll into some catching footage. Caught me a fish. First fish of the day. Little tiny guy, but you know what? I'll take him. It's better than being skunked.
Let me look.
You want to check him out?
Yeah.
All right, come down here. Caught him on the Texas rigged salamander jig.
I'm done looking at this. Beautiful.
Beautiful. All right, you gotta come sit over here because you're right in the way. So I didn't have the camera running like a dummy, like I should have been, but I just caught a nice little fish on a, what is a salamander jig actually. Real good fish. I mean, damn near as long as my tackle box. Boom.